Welcome everybody to this seminar. My name is Hans Rothenberg. I'm a member of the Moderator party in Swedish Parliament, and this is an arrangement of all 8 parties in the Parliament. We have invited 4 guest speakers from Hong Kong, as you can see in the message at the side. And one of them, Cheryl, Deputy Editor-in-Chief, Epoch Media Group in Hong Kong, was supposed to speak directly from Hong Kong, but unfortunately she will not be able to join us. The reason is the situation in Hong Kong today, and it's even more sensitive. She and her daily work might be risked by talking to us here. Therefore, we asked our Swedish colleague, Mr. Vasilios, to take her place and tell us about the media situation in Hong Kong. For all you to know, this seminar will be recorded and broadcast on YouTube later. For your information, only people who talk will be visible in the recording, and you can always mute your video if you don't want to take any videos. Please, as we now have learned since March, mute the microphone on the seminar while the guests are giving speech. We are very happy to have Mr. Joye Olsson as the moderator of our seminar today. Joye is a Swedish journalist and writer. He's living in Asia since 2007. And Joye, please take over and tell us a little about yourself before starting the meeting. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Hans, and welcome everyone to this seminar. Today Hong Kong, tomorrow the world, ? As Hans just mentioned, we have 4 very interesting speakers to listen to today. But first, I'm just going to do a very short self-introduction. I have been working as a journalist and author in Asia since 2007, and I'm currently based in Taiwan. And why do I moderate this seminar? I also have, I was asked to do it, first of all, but I also have a connection to Hong Kong. I used to live there, and I also graduated in Hong Kong. I took my Master of Journalism at the University of Hong Kong in 2010, and I've been covering the development of Hong Kong for Swedish media quite close ever since the Umbrella Revolution in 2014. And as I think and hope that some of you in the audience might already know, I recently wrote a book about Taiwan. I have it here. And right now, I'm also writing a similar book about Hong Kong. So it's going to be a book about Hong Kong's modern political history, starting more or less from the middle of the last century, but focusing on the time after the handover to China. So I hope, of course, that this book, that is the first of its kind in Swedish, will be read by some of you in the audience. And now it's enough with self-promotion. I will instead leave the word to our first speaker, which is the activist and my friend, Yik-Mo. And Wong was vice convener of the Civil Human Rights Front during the anti-extradition movement in Hong Kong last year, and he's also been working for the Demosisto, the political party that was led by Joshua Wong, but was recently disbanded. And Wong, he recently chose to self-exile himself to Taiwan, where he is now. And we will see what Wong want to tell us today. And Wong, you have your 12 minutes starting from now, so please feel free to talk about whatever you want.
Okay, thank you, Joye. Thank you to MPs for coming today. I believe many of you know the background of the Hong Kong movement protest already. So I will only focus on very limited things. So the movement started as an anti-extradition movement. And we know the danger of the bill because it will put everyone in danger. So that's how it broke out. But during the whole movement, it turned into an anti-police violence movement. The major reason why 2 million people took to the street and even fight at the front line is because they're against police violence. I would like to focus on the 5 demands that we have. So 3 of them are withdrawal of the extradition bill, and that one we have succeeded. The next one is independent investigation to police violence, which we haven't got, and this is not going to happen as long as China, Hong Kong government is in power. The last one is free election, which, as you know, the election of Legislative Council has been cancelled this year. They said this is a postponement, but we know that's not going to happen. So now let's look at the movement itself. Many people said Hong Kong movement is very successful, that so many people took to the streets, so many people supported, we've got the media attention from international communities. But look at the results. So if we look at the movement from the result, what we've got now is national security law, which is the reason why 500,000 people took to the streets to protest back in 2003. So from the result, I would say the movement has failed. We have lost. I think it is very important to understand that the movement has, we have lost. And now admitting the failure is very important, because only then we will look at what has really happened. So now I would like to give you 2 examples of the CCP's tactic to win over this protest. Of course, the CCP is always very good at splitting each other, turning people against each other. That happened during the Cultural Revolution back in the days. During the movement, we have slogans called 兄弟爬山各自努力，不分化不割席, which means we all have our own positions. So someone might be in the front line, someone might be doing lobbies, someone might be earning money and donating money to the movement. But we won't split. We believe in each other. We won't distance ourselves from each other. So it was a strong solidarity during that time to be split. But what happened now is, after the movement died down this year, especially after COVID, the whole atmosphere has changed, because we could not go protesting. So we have different focus. And of course, we also believe CCP has sent agents among different people, different groups on the internet, or infiltrating their personnel into the protesters. So people are now fighting each other on the internet. You might have heard of the Yellow Economy Circle that I have also introduced when I came to Sweden. So that's basically shops and businesses are supporting the movement, and we support these businesses so that our money circulation will be within the people who uphold the value of freedom. And now people are fighting this yellow economy, that people are criticizing them, making trouble, and people start to not believe in what people say. So that's a traditional way of CCP to create split. For example, they will say, so shop one, why do you earn so much money? Are you really helping the movement? And then there are fake news, there are fake evidence to make people believe in the criticism. So that's the first part of the split, because CCP knows economy is its weakness. And the next splitting is to split between the traditional Democrats and the youngsters. Although during the movement last year, many people focused on the street protest, we still believed in institution. So we won a landslide in the district council election last year, and some MPs from Sweden also came to visit. We won 86% of the seats. But now Beijing has learned the lesson and cancelled Legislative Council election this year. What I see is much more than just cancelling the election. CCP has made, it was a very smart move from China, because they made the existing MPs to choose whether to stay as an MP or not. And in the end, the legislators chose to stay, because of many reasons. For example, they still want to serve. And of course, salary is very important because without money, without allowance, it's very difficult to even continue the street fight. So they lost credibility. They lost support from the people. So that's what happened a few months before. And now, after China sees that the MPs have lost their credibility, they disqualified 4 legislators. And finally, all the opposition legislators decided on a mass resignation, which has been called by the people. But now this timing is very bad because this has been perceived as a late move and they've lost people's support. And these 2 examples are very good examples of CCP's tactic. Now nobody can protest, and we don't even believe in the parliament. And I believe this kind of split will also spread to Europe. Of course, on the EU level, we have seen Hungary, Greece, maybe Italy. So that's how CCP does. And I believe you know better than me how China is infiltrating in Sweden and in other parts of Europe. And now maybe people will like to know about national security law. Well, for me, it's not interesting. For Hong Kongers, it's not interesting because that's old news. Well, for us, every day we see troubles, people being arrested. We feel sad. And sometimes you even feel numb about it because, it's too painful and we need to focus on what we can do. But anyway, so national security law, there are 4 areas: subversion, secession, terrorism, and collusion with foreign forces. For example, what I do now meeting with foreign MPs and convince you to take actions, I am breaching the national security law. And national security law, article number 38 is very famous because it says the law shall apply to offenses under this law committed against the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region from outside the region, which means you can offend this in Sweden, and by a person who is not a permanent resident of the region, which means a Swedish national committing this crime in Sweden can be a breach to the law, which means Hong Kong rules the whole world. All right, so till now, many protesters have been arrested. They have arrested legislators, and now they are putting their focus on district council members. And 2 teachers were arrested for discussing issues with students. So now you cannot even discuss with students about independence. I mean, you can say, no, that's not a good choice. But China says, no, you cannot discuss. You cannot learn whether it's good or not, because China is going to tell you whether it's good or not. And even today, Carrie Lam, our chief executive, has said, anyone opposing the government can be seen as breaching national security law. So the situation now is really serious. You may say this in I don't know what time, Europe, in the law. So now we focus on what we need. Sorry, I know I have 2 minutes. So Sweden is a leading country to stand up against China in Europe, as far as I know, because all Confucius institutions have been closed. And I know you have a report of acquisition from China because you know the danger of China buying off all the businesses, or at least the important ones. And there's Magnitsky sanction that we support. We think Sweden may take reference from the US, but we think there's much more to do than Magnitsky sanction. For example, focus on the economy. There's a huge debate on the bilateral investment treaty with China by the EU. I know we know EU wants to sign it, maybe with human rights clauses, but I don't think the clauses will help. And EU should use this opportunity to bargain with China. For example, to lift national security law in Hong Kong and to have free election in Hong Kong. before you sign the treaty. There's a lifeboat scheme that because Hong Kongers, many of us are leaving Hong Kong, we seek asylum. I would just like to focus that Hong Kongers wouldn't bring a refugee crisis because we're not that many. And I believe majority of us would choose UK or Canada or Taiwan. But joining the scheme will provide alternatives. And Hong Kongers are very diligent as a workforce. And last but not least, I would like to mention that Germany has adopted a new Indo-Pacific strategy. As far as I know, France and the UK are also discussing it. I think this is very important during this time, especially under COVID-19, to shift the focus, the trade with China to more destinations, because only with the new strategy will Europe be more independent from China, especially in the regard of economy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Wong, for your update. And I want to remind all our listeners that we have a half an hour for questions after all the 4 speakers are finished. So please think about what you would like to ask Wong later on. And let's proceed to our second speaker, which is Elmer Yuen. And Elmer is a Hong Kong entrepreneur. Now he lives in exile in the US. And Elmer was also one of the first businessmen to enter the Chinese market already in 1977, just after the Cultural Revolution ended. Elmer stepped in and started to do business in China. And for our Swedish listeners, it's also worth mentioning that Elmer has been working a lot with 4G and also with Ericsson, a Swedish telecom company. And this is also obviously a very important topic right now because of the debate we have on Huawei and 5G in Sweden. So let us hear now about Elmer. He will talk about China in general and his many decades of experiences from dealing with China. So Elmer, please talk to us.
How much time I have? How much
minutes.
Time I have?
You're 12
minutes. Okay.
You have 12 minutes, Elmer, and it starts now.
Thank you. I'm very old. I'm 71 years old. I lived total 20 years in China, 10 years in Shanghai, 10 years in Beijing, 20 years in US, and the rest of the time mostly in Hong Kong. I'm a Hong Kong resident. And I went to China very early, 1977, to start my factories making digital watches and other electronic products. And I'm also a partner of Sanyo Japan and also in many, many factories in China. So in the beginning, we all believed that China is opening up. Is one day they're going to be like us. And that's what we believe. And we are Chinese, and we are supposed to help our brothers. And that was the feeling. And Deng Xiaoping said, Hong Kong, 50 years, no change. And after 50 years, maybe no need to change because China would be like Hong Kong. That's what he said. Dancing, can keep on dancing, and horse racing. So we went in, and then I opened many factories. At the highest, we were employing almost 60,000 people. And also I invested in the Mission Hills Golf Club. I was one of the 3 founders. And after that, they started before that, they had the Tiananmen incident. And that was a wake-up call. We understand that for power, they would do everything. But that wake-up call is only saying that, mainland, the people, they don't mind. They're used to suffering. They're used to have no rights. And then they're different from us. And as long as we have one country, 2 systems, we're doing okay. And we are different from them. And then they promised, and it's an international treaty. The Sino-British treaty is an international treaty, and they have no reason to throw away because they need the money, need the foreign currencies. So of course, I was at the same time watching Ericsson and many Swedish companies doing in China quite well. And so anyway, Hong Kong, since 1997, has been deteriorating. They never really kept their promise, but they kept a good appearance. So they were doing things behind the scene and buying up all the news media, mainstream media, and their control and influence is coming to Hong Kong, and less and less people can speak out. And it's until May this year, they proposed very abruptly the national security law, which basically means they are taking over Hong Kong. No more freedom, no more rule of law, and no more democracy. Means their law will override all our Hong Kong laws. So that's when I woke up. I said, this is it. It's not going to be a one country, two system. It's like Donald Trump said, it's one country, one system. So I've decided to stop all my business in China, told all my Chinese partner that they go and talk to somebody else. I would not go back and do business with them. I've decided to be an activist. Activist in try to return Hong Kong to something like 1997. It's the what do you call? It's like the British rule, but of course we like to have our self-rule. So I've decided to speak out, and I became a pretty popular KOL. I have a few 100,000 followers, and mostly Hong Kong, and I speak in Cantonese. And after that, I realized I know US quite well, so I realized our only hope is to get help from US, and they won't help us directly. But US realizing the problem, the trouble of the Chinese Communist Party, they would have to do something. And I arrived in US in the end of June, and that's when the pandemic started getting very serious. And up to now, as you know, almost 250,000 people died. Right? And then it was fortunate for me and for Hong Kong, because then US start waking up, seeing that China, the virus, this is how they treat the virus, whether it's man-made or whether it's a weapon, but at least they let it out. They let it out, and then they make money on it. And then they deny it came from China. And they say they are the one who can control the pandemic better than anybody else. The whole world should learn from them. We also learn how they control WHO and its chairman. So anyway, I'm in US, and then the second fortunate thing for Hong Kong is the election. Of course, China is behind the election, manipulating election, injecting false fake votes, and then changing Trump's vote into Biden's vote. So as I noticed, the title of this meeting is called China Win-Win. And I went to US, I talked to the Congress and also the State Department and the White House. I said, this is the win-win. First, they win in the pandemic, all right? They put the whole world into trouble. And that's the win. It's unrestricted warfare. And the second win is they are getting rid of Donald Trump. And it's happening because Donald Trump is the only one who stand up against the Chinese, against the CCP, sorry. There's nothing against the Chinese. It's really all against the Chinese Communist Party. So the situation is very, very serious. As we know, Biden is very much like the General Secretary of the WHO. He would do anything Xi Jinping tells him to do. Right? So if Biden wins, basically China control the whole world. The whole world. Trust me. Right? They don't even have to bother with this one belt, one road. If they control the White House, they control the whole world. Let's talk a little bit about my business, all right? Very difficult to make money in China. It's almost impossible. They let you make money and then you reinvest. The minute you want your money to leave Hong Kong, then the whole story starts. And if you have technology, somehow they will steal it, all right? Either they steal it or they use other means, never legal. I'm looking at the Ericsson from another point of view. All right, you guys know Ericsson far more than me, but I do business. I'm in the 3G. I have a lot of patents, and I have patent warfare with Ericsson. So in US, my company in US is called Golden Bridge Technology. They know me. So, but then you look at it first. China have nothing to do with cellular phone. All right, nothing at all, and how fast they pick up. And they really didn't have much patents when it was 2G. 3G, they start learning. And then 4G, basically, they took over. Somebody is giving away the shop. And they came up so strong. Nokia, Siemens, Ericsson, everybody's out of the way. You should really be thankful to Donald Trump. For security reason, he stopped them dead, stopped Huawei dead. So that's the reason for your business to come back. And the way they do business, the way Huawei do business, I know them very well. They are one of my licensees. All right, I know them too well. Everything is bribery. They undercut the cost and everything. And of course, Donald Trump is giving Ericsson a chance to survive and do well, right? But then, of course, Biden will be another story. It will completely return to the old situation. And of course, many countries have woken up of a security problem that this thing is causing, Huawei will be causing. But on the other hand, this is the way if China comes back, they will start bribing again. They will start their way. They have their way. They're very, very clever and very deceitful. That's the word to use, deceitful. So anyway, we are on the verge of losing the second unrestricted warfare. And it's very serious. For Hong Kong, I'm speaking for Hong Kong, and the kids woke up. The businessman is very much like a Swedish businessman. They think they can still make money. In the meantime, they're losing their freedom. They're losing their rule of law, and they're losing their home. Millions of Hong Kong people will eventually migrate. Their children will not live in Hong Kong anymore. They're not going to be educated like under the communist way. Right now, we are almost like West Berlin being invaded by the communists. Very much like that. And it's the beginning. They've exerted less than maybe 5% of those clauses in the national security law. And I think within a matter of 2 years, it's going to be 100%. And they're willing to give up the money they make from Hong Kong. They're willing to do that, risk that. So that's how bad it is. And I'm in Washington lobbying and try to work with the US and hoping that US will eventually, through both military or economic or whatever currency type of war to get rid of the CCP. And then we in Hong Kong will regain our freedom and return to our former glory. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elmer. Now I would like to proceed right away to our third speaker, which is Vasilios Soponidis. And Vasilios is the publisher of the Swedish edition of Epoch Times. And he will talk today about an issue that is very close to my heart. And that is, of course, the development of media and the state of press freedom in Hong Kong, especially the difference before and after the national security law was imposed in Hong Kong this summer. As I mentioned earlier today, I took my master in journalism in Hong Kong in 2010. And back then, I remember Hong Kong as a very free and reasonable place for journalists to work in. But I imagine, or I actually know, that the situation is very, very different today than back in 2010. So please, Vasilios, can you tell us a bit more about the media and press freedom in Hong Kong today? you have the word, and your 12 minutes is starting now.
Thank you very much, Yoye. Well, as some of you may know, the Deputy Chief Editor of the Hong Kong edition of the Epoch Times, Cheryl Ng, she was supposed to be here today to brief you on the situation of the free press in Hong Kong. However, due to security reasons, tied, of course, to the new national security law that she was actually going to speak about, and that has been imposed now on Hong Kong by the central government in Beijing, we have decided that she should not attend because, as we heard here before, the law criminalizes what it calls collusion with foreign or external forces. So I think our esteemed members of parliament attending here, you probably do not consider yourselves hostile enemy forces, right? But the Chinese regime, they may do that. So I'm here to brief you shortly on the situation. Although I think that the fact that it is a security risk for Cheryl to attend this seminar actually already gives a clear picture. I mean, how can you have a free media when you need to consider these issues, right? So, coming to the situation, I mean, of the hundreds of Hong Kong media, there's actually only two you could call independent today, two big medias, the Epoch Times being one and Apple Daily being the other. And probably you heard what happened with the owner of Apple Daily, Jimmy Lai, who was arrested and then released again. He was arrested on charges. It was about having a demonstration, right, without a permit, attending a demonstration without a permit. But of course, it was a totally different situation before '97, like we heard here before. I mean, Hong Kong citizens, they would enjoy a free press. But actually, as Elmer noted, Beijing has, since the 70s, actually been buying stakes in Hong Kong media. And this shows us how the Chinese regime works long-term to infiltrate and finally take over the free press. And this has been done in Hong Kong. It has been done also it's going on in Taiwan, in Asia, and actually all over the world. And because Hong Kong was a free society, so it was easy for China to buy shares in the media. Of course, they didn't buy all the shares at once, right? They used the salami tactics where they bought slice by slice over a 40-year period. So in the beginning of the 80s, about 10% maybe of the papers were controlled by the CCP. You may know of Tsingtao, the biggest one, right? It was an anti-communist paper in the 50s to the 80s, but it gradually went from criticizing the Communist Party to more of reporting like having an understanding of the Chinese Communist Party and to finally praise the party. So it has been a gradual process, of course. And they had time because, as you may know, they don't think in terms of quarter of a year like we do here in the West. They think in terms of generations, right? So you probably recognize the method because this is also how Beijing has been buying up foreign companies, also Swedish companies lately. And this is what the Communist Party calls them strangle them with their own system. I mean, strangle the enemy with their own system. So they use our freedoms, like in this case, they used Hong Kong freedoms to buy up the companies and control them. Of course, the other way around is, of course, not to think of, right? Because you couldn't go and buy like People's Daily in China. So in this way, they have control over the media in Hong Kong. And you may know that Jack Ma of Alibaba, he bought was it 40% of South China Morning Post, which I would say is, well, the most influential English-speaking media from Hong Kong. So back to today, when we only have a couple of free newspapers left that refuse to be bought or in any other way controlled by Beijing, Beijing has actually only one way to go forward, and that is intimidation. So, and this is also a well-known tactic here in Sweden. I can give you an example from Hong Kong. Our edition of Epoch Times in Hong Kong, they signed a distribution agreement with the chain 7-Eleven, you might know of. And this agreement, it was cancelled by 7-Eleven due to current circumstances. And of course, the current circumstances being that Beijing threatened the 7-Eleven to close all the 7-Eleven on the mainland if they would, go carry through with the contract. So I think that what this does here is, this is a very well-known tactic here in Sweden, because this is how they work also here, right? Our politicians attending here know very well of this kind of intimidation, where they approach different businesses and say, if you do this, or if you invite Dalai Lama, or if you do that, then it will lead to us maybe not doing business with you. So, and for us, I'm thinking here in the West, it's actually a warning to us here, because Hong Kong was also a free society. So what they have been doing there systematically, continuously, and ongoing is exactly the same thing that they are doing in the West. So it is like a Hong Kong gentleman said, he said, if Hong Kong falls, the whole world falls. And I think there's truth to that saying, actually. So it started in Hong Kong. And of course, I think that people who are a bit into this, how the Chinese Communist Party is operating, they can see that this is, of course, in the long run, a bigger picture. Right now, for example, Elmer, you spoke about what's happening in the US, right? So with the Communist Party, the Chinese Communist Party infiltrating also in the US. So this is the quest for world dominance that you were talking about. So I spoke this morning again with the Cheryl, and to tell you, what's happening on the ground, they are very afraid right now. And they actually don't know what will happen tomorrow, because everything it has become like in the mainland. So anything can happen. So talking about a free press in Hong Kong, I think there actually is no free press anymore, in the sense that we knew of before, or in the sense, that we have here in the West. And as I stated earlier, it's just like, we can understand this just from this seminar that Cheryl couldn't attend because of this national security law, right? So this actually says everything. If the media cannot speak freely, then there's no free media anymore. So I guess that the sentiments that my previous speakers here have conveyed to us is a very, actually very pessimistic sentiment. And this is also what I hear from Hong Kong and from our editors in Hong Kong at the Epoch Times. I would say what is important for us here would be that to be informed, stay informed, for our politicians to know what's happening. I know Georgia here has a very nice blog that I follow. He reports continuously about the situation in China, in the mainland, in Hong Kong. Me being the publisher of the Epoch Times, you can read the Epoch Times. We have the Swedish edition. I will ask you here to send our new e-paper to all the politicians and everyone here attending. to keep being informed and follow the situation, what is happening. And then I think that our Swedish politicians will be able to follow their conscience and take the right steps of what everyone actually would think is important for Hong Kong right now. Thank you very much, Yoye. I think I stop here, right?
Yeah, thank you very much for your interesting presentation. And of course, I must agree that it's very hard to follow what's happening in China and Hong Kong in the Swedish media, especially during the American election campaign. There's been a lot of focus on the election when it comes to the foreign reporting in Swedish media. So yeah, follow my blog as Vasilios recommended, but also I would recommend even more that read international media when it comes to China and Hong Kong, because it's very many international medias that has reporters on site, both in Hong Kong and Taiwan, and even still in China, even though it's increasingly few. When it comes to China, Hong Kong, Taiwan, the region, please also follow international media closer for Swedish listeners. And then we have only one speaker left, and we're looking quite good time-wise. So I guess we'll be about half an hour for questions after we have heard our fourth speaker, and that is Manyan, who is Director of International Societies of Human Rights, the German branch of this organization. There is also co-hosting this event. And Anne has been working in China also for about 3 decades. He worked for the Swedish company ABB, and he was focusing on marketing and sales for global market. And now he's a frequent speaker in international forums. And Anne is going to talk today about a topic that is something that creates a very, very big worries in many countries, but it's also hard to grasp because it's a very complicated topic, and it's about China's what you can call warfare with modern technology and artificial intelligence and the big data and so on. And also the party organization United Front, which for our Swedish listeners is maybe better known as Enhetsfronten, which is a party organization that has one of its most important tasks is to try to rally support for the Communist Party, not only in China, but also abroad. So this is kind of covert operations together with some high technology issues. So please, Manyan, let us know what you want to talk about. Your 12 minutes is starting now.
Thank you. Sorry. Actually, my experience with China, business experience with China, has some similarity with Elmer. I also thought that, in the 80s, that Chinese Communist Party is ready to reform, So I was actually thinking, okay, so good that to do business with them, and so I was actually one of the pioneers for my company to break through in the Chinese market, and within a few years, I also managed to help the company. If we only look at that time, only foreign companies in the area of, we call it power system automation, a very high-tech technology. We managed to get something like 65% of the market share, which is a huge market share. So in a way, I was the one who was cheated by the Communist Party. But luckily, I was probably also one of the first one who woke up in my company, ABB, because I actually suggested, I think it was 2004 already, to exit China, at least within that technology. The reason is very simple, 2 reasons. One is, like Elmer mentioned, is a lot of bribing, a lot of corruption. And the second thing is, they buy just because they want to get access to our technology. And any means is good, bribing everyone, including try to bribe me. So And I'm happy today that that suggestion I made to the group management is correct. I still insist that it's correct, and I think more and more people agree to me after now 15 years or so that that suggestion was correct, and we did it also. So here I mentioned this because I just want you guys to always remember the leaders of the communist parties, they are master of deception. Remember that, they are master of deception. For them, the principle they really believe in and always follow is the end justifies the means. So any means is okay for them. Lies, deception, and killing, okay? Killing in openly, killing behind the scene, and so on. Now, for 2 years ago, I delivered a speech at the European Parliament in a conference about China, particularly about China human rights. And I ended my speech by saying, ladies and gentlemen, China is the biggest present danger of our world. And it is already 5 minutes to 12. And today, I want to tell you, no, it's not 5 minutes to 12, it's 3 minutes to 12. So if European and many other people in the world, in the free world, do not wake up and act, it can be, too late. So today I would focus on the question of AI, artificial intelligence, and big data. Well, AI is a huge area. I actually also work a little bit with AI when I was still before my retirement. Yeah, AI, is a huge area. You can starting from intelligent robot who can act like a human to fully automated car driving, and all the way to facial recognition, and body language recognition, and so on and so on. Now, we know that in Hong Kong, for example, they have also installed many monitoring cameras, with the aim of being quickly to identify every person who may be a so-called risk for the Communist Party. And that is nothing that they started a few years ago. No. I remember about 15 years ago, in a general assembly of the company Oracle, or shareholder assembly, one very clever shareholder, he was raising the question to the top management of the company Oracle. He said, are we aware that one of our biggest customers is a Chinese company and buying our most expensive and most advanced database machines, super database machine. And I have the information that behind this company is MSS, which means Ministry of State Security, the Chinese Secret Service. Yeah, and are we aware of that? And what is our policy? That was his question. Yeah, unfortunately, in most big tech company in California, money play a bigger role than other things. So already 15 years ago, they systematic. At that time, they did not master so much of AI and big data. So why they buy all these super database machines? Because they need that to process all this huge amount of data, not only for Hong Kong, but the whole China, and not only the whole China, the whole world. Yeah. So why you need all this data? Well, I tell you, to make it simple, not to become too technical, person recognition. It is like building a puzzle picture. The more puzzle bits you have, the more puzzle parts you have, you can build more picture, right? But you need a certain intelligence to, in case you have, thousands of puzzles, and how you manage to pick those puzzles and build a picture, that is artificial intelligence, one part of it, yeah? And so they started a long time ago to identify artificial intelligence, big data, and all the high tech is a way for us to, so to say, be more superior to the West. They knew in conventional warfare, it will take China many, many decades to catch up. So that's why the clever thing is they are very good in learning from old strategy. You know, I used to say the Chinese Communist Party, they damaged a lot of Chinese traditional culture, except one, and that is strategy. You know, in old China, in the time, say 500 years before Christ, in China there were many, many brilliant strategies, because there was the time was called the warring states. You know, China was divided into 7, I think, states fighting each other. So they developed a lot of strategy. I remember one of the strategy, or one of the principle in strategy is they say, it is great to win a war, but it is much better to win without a war. And this is what they have been doing. To win a war, I mean, a conventional war against America is too tough. So let's win the cyber war, win the media war, win the financial war, win the economic war, and so on and so on. And they have been extremely successful, and not only because many clever Chinese were brainwashed by the party and happened. That's not the only reason. Another reason is too many people in the free world have been sleeping. We never think in terms of, particularly in Sweden. I've been living 14 years in Sweden. It's very seldom a Swedes, when they look at the world, to think who is our enemy, who is our friends. But I tell you, 100 millions and 100 millions of Chinese, since they are a child, they learn to see who is our enemy, who is our first enemy, who is our second enemy. And they all learn that USA is our enemy number 1. Europe is enemy number 2, potential enemy number 2. But let's try to win over enemy number 2 to fight against enemy number 1. So China has been nicer to Europe, so to say, than US. But of course, it doesn't mean that they are always showing an aggressive face. No, because one of those old traditional strategies is use perception as a magic weapon. So the Chinese Communist Party has, since the time of Deng Xiaoping, when after Mao, have been applying deception as their main strategy to influence Western society or society of all democratic country and the free world, and to influence them, to control them, to monitor them. So, ladies and gentlemen, already, again, my personal experience, 10 years ago, I used to have a business partner who are in high tech. You know, he run a company selling things like content management system, intelligent one, and also so-called one-to-one marketing system. One-to-one marketing system meaning you collect a lot of data about people, also big data, and then you figure out every individual person, what they need to buy, what they want to buy, what is their interest. From the technological point of view, it's exactly the same as what the Communist Party is using for political reason. So technically, it's the same thing. So, and this friend of mine, he suddenly, when he found out my view about Chinese Communist Party, then he said, Manyan, make sure you don't use any mobile phone from Huawei or ZTE. And you don't use a computer from Lenovo, and you don't buy anything from Alibaba. I pretend not to understand. I say, why? So to let him to tell me more. He said, you know what? I used to be IT department head of Secret Service of one of the European country. For his security, I don't mention which country. One of the European countries, EU country. And so he knows what has been going on behind the scene. He say already 1 year ago, they had all these big companies I mentioned, they have agreed to the party leadership to provide them all data they have collected So, ladies and gentlemen, maybe you have been using Alibaba, maybe you have been using TikTok from the company ByteDance, and so on and so on. Or maybe you even use a Huawei mobile phone or all this IT system from China. Your personal data are all collected in a huge big data processing system. Okay. So in Hong Kong, they are already using it to quickly catch all the so-called dissidents or protesting people. In Sweden, they don't start catching yet, but they are getting themselves prepared. Okay, so the question is, we now should know it is very dangerous. Yeah, I know that some people told me, well, you see, I'm living in Germany now. Some German business friends, they say, yeah. And German politicians, they say, yeah, but we are too dependent on China economically. I used to tell them, you know what? Assuming I have been doing business with a company, and one day I discover this company actually is the mafia. The whole company is just a mafia. They pretend to be.
Sorry, Anne, there is 12 minutes already, so if you can just wrap up. On what
I will. Yeah. So what? In that case, I say, what shall I do? Decouple, but in a smart way. You plan it in advance, step by step decouple. So my advice to Sweden, you have done a good job in saying no to Huawei, but that is only a small step in the decoupling. Yeah, but you better think about decoupling a lot more. Yeah, look at India. They have banned some 120 Chinese app for mobile phone and so on. Yeah, for the security reason. And you should also make sure that work together with EU, work together with America, because we work together with the whole free world, because it is a fight, it is a war between freedom and tyranny. It's not a fight between China and US. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Anne Manyan, for your presentation. And I think this topic about acquisitions and investment, especially into high technology companies, is something very important. Some of the earlier speakers mentioned there's a second Cold War going on right now, and that is something that the relation between China and the US, the situation is more often called the second Cold War. And it's important to understand that this Cold War is not about tanks and nuclear bombs as the First World War. It's more about high technology. The Chinese Communist Party want to get self-reliant on manufacturing semiconductors and microchips and so on and so forth. And for our Swedish listeners, on Friday, there will be a long feature that I wrote for the Swedish magazine Focus. I think there will be the feature of the week, and it's about Chinese investments into high technology companies in Europe and Sweden. So that is a bit of more information what kind of methods China might be using to get its hands on European technology. Good. Then we have finished all the 4 presentations, and then it's time for us to move on to questions. And we have 25 minutes, half an hour, and if anyone wants to ask a question, there is 2 ways to do this. Either you can write in the chat, which you can find in the top right corner of your screen. Please write not the full question first, or just mention that you want to ask a question. Or you can raise hand, which is in the bottom menu. When you raise the hand, I will see that someone has raised the hand, and I will eventually let the person ask a question. Unfortunately, I was dropped out from the talk a few minutes ago, so I can't see the chat history. But as I remember it, there was 3 persons already that wanted to ask a question. And now one of them raised the hand again, and that's Alexander Christiansen. So Alexander, would you like to ask your question in the chat, or would you like to be connected with the sound? I think that our moderator can fix that.
Perfect. I would rather sound if it's possible. Do you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Please ask your question, and then I will see. Maybe I will perhaps make a short comment on it myself, and then I will see who of our four speakers who appear to be most suited to answer the question. So please go ahead and ask.
Great. Thank you. My name is Alexander Christiansen from the Sweden Democrats of the Swedish Parliament, and I just had two short questions. And the first one is combined with what Elmer Yuen was talking about the Trump administration and the trade deal that's been going on. And I was just wanted to know what the consequences will be when Biden takes office. What do you think will be going on after that? And the other one is your take on the foreign governments around the world. If we are taking this threat seriously enough, and if we don't, what do you consider us? What should we do? Like, what's your take on that as well? Yeah, that would be my two questions. Thank you.
Yeah, so
this is Elmer.
The first question.
Can I answer?
The first question I would like Elmer to answer, and then the second question I will probably let Yik-Mo answer that one. But Elmer, please answer the question about the trade war we have.
Sure. If Joe Biden becomes the president, everything Donald Trump have done in the last 4 years will be undone. So you can very easily imagine it will return to the Obama days. Very, very simple. Everything. He will undo everything. That's his promise. It's far more than a Cold War. This is far more than a Cold War. This is really the free world against the Chinese Communist Party. And their dominance is way beyond China. Look at Vatican. You should really notice the secret agreement they have with Vatican. Even Vatican they can control. WHO, WTO, human rights under UN and United Nations itself is under their control. You guys are not safe. You think, Europe can continue to do business. That's not the case. Their ambition is to first have the European Asian landmass, and then later on, eventually, they want to control the North America. They're already in Africa, South America, very easy for them. They're dying to have some money from China. And their next objective is coming through Middle East, Central Asia, and then to Eastern Europe and Europe. But fortunately, this time, at least Donald Trump has woke us up. I know nobody likes Donald Trump. I know very well. But compare from 1 to 10. China is our number one enemy. And Donald Trump is our number 10. And one more thing I want to add. Don't read the major media. The mainstream media are all bought by China. In Hong Kong, even the Apple Daily, which is the strongest, most independent, now is kowtowing to China. All right? And USA, all the mainstream media, you name it, don't read them. The one to read is the Epoch Times. Seriously, they are the only one who is willing to stand up against the communist China. It's a very, very serious problem. I don't know how.
Okay, Elmer, thank you. Thank you for your answer. We have a few more questions here, so we have to go on. Regarding your question, Alexander, I was actually looking a bit closer into this with the trade war that you have between China and the US. And according to most analysis and predictions, I think that Joe Biden is not a fan of having those. Joe Biden is not a fan of having extra trade obstacles, so he will probably not impose anything more like higher taxes on Chinese goods, but he will probably also not recall them. because he will probably use them as leverage in a discussion with the Chinese government and other issues. Anyway, the second question that you had, Alexander, was regarding did the foreign governments take the threat from China seriously, and if they don't, what should the foreign governments do that they are not doing today? And this is a question that Yik-Mo has been working a lot with, especially in European context. So please, Yik-Mo, answer that question.
All right. I think foreign governments, especially in Europe, you're not taking threat from China seriously. Well, I think there is a threat, but foreign governments especially trying to balance business and human rights, which is understandable because you are also responsible for your own countries, which, I think this is understandable, and that's why we have to discuss why having trading with China is actually harmful to your nationals. I think many foreign countries are being naive, especially when dealing with COVID-19. We have warned very early that COVID-19 is coming to the whole world, but nobody in Europe or in the US were willing to wear a mask. I was discriminated against when I was in business trip in Denmark back in February. And now look at what happens there. Well, in Hong Kong, we cannot control. But in Taiwan, we are smart and we know China is not is a threat. And that's why we don't have COVID-19 here in Taiwan. And in regard with trade, I think Europe underestimated China. Of course, balancing business and human rights is very important. But look what happened back in the days when Europe believed in China, that making China rich will make China also democratic. It was a failure. So I think what we should do is to reweigh business and politics, because economics is politics and politics is economy. Only with a stable, independent economy from China, then you can talk about human rights, which is also your value. I think Elmer was right just now in his speech that first China will let you earn money, which is very easy at the beginning. But when you become dependent on them, or when China become richer than you, then the control starts.
Yeah, thank you very much for that answer. And there is, of course, a lot more to say on both of those topics. And we will do that another day because we have 4 more questions so far. And the next person who wants to ask something here to our speakers is David Lega. So please, if we can get some sound to David Lega, so ask a question.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, perfect. My name is David Lega. I'm a member of the European Parliament from the Christian Democrats in Sweden and a member of EPP group within the European Parliament. And I totally agree with you that the European Union woke up too late regarding how to treat China as the threat it has become. But I also believe that the view towards China today have changed regarding Hong Kong, regarding Taiwan, regarding the situation for Uyghurs, for example. So I have 2 short questions. One is, we are trying to form new ways of collaboration to work together. For example, the IPAC Alliance, which I'm a member of, but also within Brussels, the Hong Kong Watch Group. How do you view these kinds of collaboration? And do you believe they can make a difference? And also, we are working harder with demands on reciprocity, sanctions, and conditionality regarding the follow-up on our own statutes. So you have partly answered it, but what, in your view, should we further do at this stage where we are exactly now to make a larger difference? It would be interesting to hear concrete suggestions on how to proceed. Thank you. And thank you for being a part of this very important discussion.
Thank you very much, David. And your 2 questions here. The first one regarding alliances and organizations and so on, and especially with regards to Hong Kong. I would like Vasilios to answer that one. And then the second question which is about quite in the same area as Alexander's question. What can we do more? Is the sanctions a good option, and so on? I would like Manyan to answer that question. So please, the first one, if Vasilios, if you will, can you answer that question?
Yes, I would say like this. Of course, all those kind of alliances, I would say, between the three countries to counter the threat from Chinese Communist Party is, of course, very good. However, what we need to stop it is actually to have laws that stop them. Let me tell you why I say this, because what I said before was that Chinese Communist Party, they have this saying, strangle the enemy with their own systems. So, I mean, they can come here and they use our democratic system, they use our rule of law, so that they can, they use our private enterprises. They can just buy companies, right? And when they buy companies, they have leverage. So this is a major issue that I think needs to be solved. And now I know that Sweden is working on this kind of legislation to stop foreign companies, and this is, of course, directed to China, specifically, I would say. So this is maybe. So, I mean, although it's, of course, what you're saying is needed, we need to have these kind of alliances and working through these kinds of organizations. However, we also need to stop what they are doing in this kind of way, where we have, we just have laws that stop them, because otherwise they can continue. Because however many alliances we have or organizations working for this, they will still use our system to do what they want. And another thing is that I can agree here with David Lega that the view has changed. I mean, the Swedish people's views about the Chinese Communist Party has changed, right? I mean, 84% now are negative. And this is very good. However, if you look at in the business circles, I mean, lately we have read Dagens Industri. They think it's it's not very good that we stop Huawei because because they are cheap, they are good, we lose money. But I would say like this: why nothing has happened for so many years is because we have treated all those issues like human rights issues. Like, I mean, the Uyghurs, the Falun Gong, the Tibetans, it's human rights issues, right? So human rights compared to business and jobs means nothing. I mean, this is from a realistic point of view, right? But now, if we can see that this is actually national security issues, if we can understand this, it will be a big difference.
Yeah, thank you very much. And Manyan, if you have anything to reply to David's second question, it would be interesting to hear your view on that.
Okay. First, I think it's important for us to understand Chinese Communist Party has not become worse now in the recent years, doing all this in Hong Kong and so on in the world. No, it is part of the master plan. The master plan, as formulated by Deng Xiaoping, was hide our strength and wait for our time, or bide our time, which means, today they think the time has come to show their strength. Before is to hide their strength. So don't think that they were better off. They were better when they were hiding their strength. Okay. So then the question, I remember the question was, what else we can do? I think the first step Sweden and all other democratic countries should do is to demand for reciprocal relationship in trade, in everything. Donald Trump actually was right in that. He said it must be reciprocal. If China can even make ads, put the China Daily every week in Washington Post and in New York Times and so on, then we must also be allowed to do the same thing. But this is not the case. It's incredible. In China, is zero press freedom. Foreign press have no chance to spread around in China. Okay, so and many other things, in trade, in cultural exchange, in scientific exchange, everything. It has not been reciprocal. They could utilize all the freedom and openness of our society and block us for everything they want to block at ours. So that is the first step we have to do. And the second step, as I mentioned before, you have to have a step-by-step plan how to decouple with Chinese economy and Chinese politics as long as there is a Chinese Communist Party ruling this country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I also personally think that this reciprocity, which in Swedish we would say ömsesidighet, is something very important. A lot of things that Chinese companies, media are allowed to do in Western countries would never ever happen for the other way around. And that's dangerous waters. And now we have about 10 minutes left for questions, and we have actually 5 people who want to ask some questions here. I'm not sure if we can make time for all of it, but we can try to keep our answers slightly shorter so that we might be able to answer more of those questions. Next person who want to ask something is Bo Bjerregaard Rasmussen. Would you please let us know your question?
Yeah. Yes. Hello. My name is Bo. I'm an independent businessman from Denmark. I have a background before being independent as a Danish diplomat. I have also been serving in China. We are, as has been pointed out, in the middle of a Cold War. We are still talking about how to defend ourselves from China. That's a limited strategy. How do we carry, so to speak, the war to the enemy's shores? As long as we just sit back and try to defend ourselves, we leave the initiative to the Chinese Communist Party. How do we start bothering them so they don't have so much energy to invade our systems? Can we help Western companies that will disengage from the Chinese markets? How can we do that? Can we start doing something where we promote more relationship with the countries in Southeast Asia, Japan, Taiwan, that surround Korea, that surrounds China? How can we do things actively? How can we make it visible to the China Communist Party that we don't believe in that? We don't want to hear you talk. We don't want to receive any cultural exchanges from you, because the Communist Party of China is the entity that has been destroying traditional Chinese culture rather than promoting it. I don't know who should answer. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you both. So how do we regain the initiative? How do we end the passiveness that we can see now? How do we put pressure on China before they reach our shores, as Bo was expressing it here? Maybe Elmer could
I'd like to answer that question.
Please try to keep it about a minute or so.
Yeah, I'd like very much to answer that question.
As well.
Yeah. I've been in Washington for 4 months, and I've been lobbying at the Congress to designate the Chinese Communist Party as a transnational criminal organization and all its members as mafia criminals. And if we are able to do that, then automatically everybody will watch out. When you sign a contract, you make sure the guy sitting opposite to you is not a communist. And the communists will not be allowed to come to your country and then doing all kinds of infiltration. So this is my solution, is to designate the CCP as a transnational communist criminal organization. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that answer. Yeah, Vasilios, very quick, Vasilios.
I can.
Yes, I would also like to add this, very good, I would say, this initiative. I would like to add that as soon as we talk about businesses and doing business, we also need to add the aspect of money, right? So for the businesses to decouple from China, they also need support from the government, probably, like Japan has done, putting about $2 billion in helping Japanese companies move out from China back to Japan or to other countries, or like the US is planning to do. So this is also something that needs to be considered from a political standpoint, I mean.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's correct. You can see the same trend in, for instance, Western universities. Many of them are economically dependent on Chinese students right now. And that makes a tool for the Chinese government to put pressure on those countries. So one method that has been suggested to counter that situation is that the foreign government should go in and pay more for the public universities in order to make universities less dependent on China. And I think, of course, the same can be done with companies, as have already happened in Japan, as you mentioned. We have only a few minutes left, and someone suggested to take more questions in a row to make it faster, but I would rather prioritize quality before quantity here, and I think we can do maybe 2 or 3 more questions. Next person in line is Yasmin Nilsson. Please, if you would like to ask a question.
Thank you so very much. Well, my name is actually Yasmin Posio, and I'm a member of the Swedish Parliament representing the Left Party. And I would like to let you know that all parties in the Committee on Foreign Affairs cooperated on a committee report on China, which is mostly unusual. The different parties in Sweden rarely ever agree altogether. But since the imprisonment of Gui Minhai, and the way China buys into Swedish companies and the way the Chinese ambassador in Sweden acts towards members of parliament and Swedish media, we agreed that we needed to act together. And that's what I believe is one way to work towards showing China that we stand together. In the Left Party, we believe that Sweden, as a democratic country who values human rights very highly and believe that everyone is equal, we have to cooperate with other countries that has the same values. We have to work multilaterally to reach that point that we all together can stand up to China and say that the way they are acting is not okay. A lot of you have spoken about Trump being a good guy to listen to, but he doesn't believe in multilateralism. And we who want to cooperate with other democratic countries that believe in human rights and that everyone is equal to each other, can you see other ways that we can work together to show China that the way they are acting is not okay? And I also would like to know, what can we do to support people in Hong Kong, the people on the streets, not only, on the big scale when it comes to acting against China, but to get support to the people protesting on the streets. Because as a leftist, I really believe in solidarity with the people rising against the power. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Yasmin. So I could understand that you had 2 questions here, and the first question we already touched upon it actually a couple of times, and I would like to go to the second question, which I think is very important. How can we help people on the ground in Hong Kong right now? And I know that Yik-Mo just came back from Hong Kong in June, if I remember correctly, so that was only a few months ago. Could you please tell us, Yik-Mo, what could Western politicians and also the public opinion, what can we do to help people on the ground in Hong Kong?
Right, thank you, Yasmin, for the question. Good to see you again. I think to support Hong Kong, there are many ways. As you mentioned, how to support the Hong Kong still in the streets. What I have to say, sadly, we cannot protest in the street anymore. Because of the regulations now, the law, national security law, it's actually impossible to protest in Hong Kong. But many people left Hong Kong, and although I think that's not ideal, but we try to conserve our culture, and we try to rest and prepare for the next wave. For example, I'm in Taiwan. Many people are in Taiwan, and some of them choose to go to UK or to Canada. There are a few things that we need because we don't have time. I will go directly. There are restrictions, and I think it's good that Sweden also opens up the lifeboat scheme, as discussed in the European Parliament. I think David Liga knows about. As I mentioned, Hong Kongers are not going to storm into Sweden and create a crisis. People normally choose English-speaking countries, but I think it's very important for people to, to choose different destinations and to learn different things from different countries and tell different stories. So I think a lifeboat scheme is very good, and I think funding is another problem. People now are using up the funding from Hong Kong. So and gigs. What a celebrity in Hong Kong is raising fund in Hong Kong to support protesters in Taiwan and in other countries. He has been arrested, I think yesterday or the day before yesterday. So I think, although it doesn't sound nice to talk about money, but I think funding is actually very important. So if there's any way, maybe from the government, maybe from civil societies, to provide fundings for protesters from Hong Kong, I think there will be a great help.
Thank you very much. So yeah, we are a couple of minutes after our schedule now, so I would like to ask the organizers if it's possible to raise another question, or how are we doing time-wise? I will take that as a yes, since no one interrupted.
Yeah, I think you can have a short question, and I will wrap it up after that. So one last question.
May I?
Thank you. Yeah, so let's take one more question, and the last one for the evening, and that is Matthias Tegner. Please ask your question.
No, I will wrap up the meeting and thank everybody. So it would be very rude that I take the last question. So please give somebody else the possibility of asking them.
Can I give an answer to the last question about Trump?
Yeah, sorry about that. Very briefly.
Okay, very briefly.
Okay.
Okay. So when I say something positive about Trump, it's not because of any personal things. Yeah, it is a fact that America is the strongest power in the world since Second World War. Right now, and that you guys have to be aware that Chinese Communist Party understand that they are their biggest danger. I mean, USA, they look at USA as their biggest danger. So they have been spending a huge effort through deception and other things to manage this problem. So now you have to be aware that for many decades, President from Clinton to Bush to Obama, they have done nothing against China. They have just been feeding this dangerous red dragon. And now the red dragon is big and bites back, okay? And Donald Trump, no matter what you think about him, is the first president since decades who is going to use America as the strongest power to fix this problem. So you guys have to understand, Europe can never manage it themselves. Forget it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. So yeah, I see we have one question in the line about Norway. I think that we should take another question instead to utilize the expertise you have in the panel. But when it comes to Norway and the free trade agreement, let me just say very quickly here that Norway is in between a rock and a hard place because it's not a European Union member. So it will have to negotiate its own trade deals with China, and also since 2016. When Norway had to apologize for Lucia Borge the Nobel Peace Prize. In general, Norway is very reluctant to oppose anything that China does. So yeah, quick answer on that question. I think that some other countries will think that it's a move in the wrong direction. But Norway and China has a very, very complicated relationship that's far too long to go into here. We have in the panel one digital publisher, and we also have one expert on artificial intelligence and data. So Niels Parup-Petersen, please ask your question about the digital sphere, and then we will have 2 very short answers on that.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, it's because the war that we are talking about is basically a digital war at the moment, more or less. So I would like to know the countries that you find have applied the most or the best policies to prevent China from winning this digital war by taking over the tech side of most countries. So I would like good examples. One of you mentioned India before, who's cancelled quite a lot of apps. But what other good examples are there? Thank you.
Yeah, Vasilios, please. Do you have any examples of countries who have a good strategy to handle the digital war, or for that sake, the high-tech war we see now?
Yes. I mean, India was mentioned here, and of course, India has a very special situation, right? Because they are like a border to China, and they have had some fighting going on. So it's understandable that they take these measures. But also, I would say that the US is actually at the forefront of doing this. And the administration today has also banned and is moving to ban more apps from China. So I would say they are the ones leading this challenge.
Yeah.
Yes.
How about Manyan? Do you have anything to add to that question?
Well, yeah, very short. I agree with what Vasilios said. America has been doing a lot of things since Donald Trump came to power. It's a fact. By the way, about maybe 3-4 months back, Donald Trump decided to spend $3 billion to pull down the Chinese Great Firewall. And that is important because that solves a lot of problems. You see, the Chinese Communist Party can do a lot of evil stuff only because they manage to cheat so many Chinese. And that is because of the firewall. And if you manage to pull it down, then the Chinese will wake up. And they are the people who can really change the Communist Party or get rid of them. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I must add also personally here, I think Taiwan is very vigilant on this issue. Taiwan is often overlooked because it doesn't have the status as a country in many forums. But yeah, Taiwan is treating this issue very, 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 very seriously. And just last week, there was one of the pro-China TV channels here, Zhongtian Xinwen CTI in Chinese. They don't get a new permission to continue to broadcast here in Taiwan, which is a very serious step that I think many other countries don't dare to take. But in Taiwan is treating this threat from the digital and data threat from China in a very serious matter. Yeah, that was all the questions we had time for tonight. And so please, Matthias, would you take over the word and finish this seminar?
Yes, thank you so much, Yuen. On behalf of the organizers, I would like to thank everybody. Yoye for moderating, ISHR, Shangji and Peter Ebert for co-organizing, and of course also our speakers. I'm sure that all of us will have a lot of things to think about after this meeting, both including the threat from China, but also how we can defend ourselves without attacking our own democracy and our own free press, which is of course very important. And I think that's why, for example, the Chinese ambassador is attacking free media in Sweden. So it's very important that we, when we are trying to promote democracy and fighting these issues, not attack the foundation of open societies. With that said, I thank you all for participating, and I'm sure that we will have good reasons to continue the discussion. So thank you so much, everybody.